If you live in the southern US, there's a good chance you have this common edible weed growing in your lawn or landscape, hiding delicious, crunchy tubers right underneath the surface of the soil that you can harvest every spring. Hi, my name is Matthew Hunter with Legacy Wilderness Academy, and in this video, we're going to be talking about the edible and medicinal uses of the Florida betony, also called rattlesnake root. We'll look at how to identify Florida betony, how to harvest it for a food, and how to use the top part of the plant as a medicine to support brain health, nervous system health, and treat stress and anxiety. Stick with me. Before we begin, I want to quickly mention that if you want to learn more about medicinal plants of the Southeast, make sure that after this video, you check the description below for my free guide to medicinal plants of the Southeast. Let's get to it. First, let's look at how to identify Florida betony and talk about where it grows and where you can find it. So I always try to teach people that you want to learn how to recognize a plant without flowers so that you can find it for a longer period of the year. It's only going to be flowering around the month of April and into May, but if you can learn how to identify it by its leaves, you can find it for a long period. So the Florida betony, first of all, it has leaves that are shaped like a Christmas tree. You can see that it has that sort of Christmas tree appearance there. The margins of the leaves are what we call scalloped or crenate margins. That's your little botany lesson of the day. That just means that it does have teeth, but they're kind of rounded, okay? Now, Florida betony is in the mint family, which means it has opposite leaves. So you can see there how the leaves come out across each other on the same place along the stem. That is a characteristic of the mint family. And it also has square stems. So if you roll it in between your fingers, you can feel that the stems are square. Another common characteristic of the mint family. As far as the smell goes, a lot of people say that betony does not have a minty smell, and that's because it does have a smell, but it's really faint. So you're usually only going to smell it if you have a big bundle of the plants all together. Then you can smell that peppermint smell, but it's more faint than many of the mint family plants. So next, let's look at some of the flowers, and then we're going to talk about where you can find this plant. Next, you can see what the flowers look like. They're a pretty light pink color. They appear at the top of the plant, and they are typical of the mint family. So if you're not familiar with your botany, memorize the shape of these flowers. This is going to be the shape that you see in virtually all of the mint family plants. It has an upper hood and a lower lip, and then a lot of times it'll have a couple little side petals flaring out from the sides of the lower lip. So really easy plant to identify when it's flowering. And lastly, we're going to look at the root, which is perhaps the most distinct identification feature of the plant. Right underneath the surface of the soil, you can find these little white roots shaped like a grubworm. You can see where the plant gets its name, rattlesnake root, because a lot of people think they resemble a rattlesnake's rattle. So these are the main edible part of Florida betony and the part we'll be focusing on in this video. In the early 1900s, Florida betony was endemic to Florida. That means it only grew in Florida. But around the 1940s and 50s, it started spreading all over the southeastern US and is now considered an invasive weed throughout all of the Southeast, even though it's a native plant. So you're going to find it in lawns and landscapes in Southeast Texas, throughout the state of Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and then the southern half of the Gulf Coast states, southern half of Mississippi, southern Alabama, southern Georgia, throughout the whole state of Florida, and then in eastern North Carolina and South Carolina, so the eastern halves of those states. In the wild, you'll oftentimes find it in moist, shady areas next to water. So it's going to be on the edges of rivers, in sandy soil a lot of times, or you'll find it in just like little depressions that sort of drain into larger creeks. That's where I typically find it. But it's really, really common in yards, and a lot of you watching this, go out, check your yard. You may just have it growing there. Scientifically, Florida betony is known as Stachys floridana. And as we get into a discussion about its edible and medicinal uses, we should be aware of a couple more important species in this genus. So the genus Stachys grows all around the world and has hundreds of species in it. It's a very medicinally active genus with species all over the place from the Middle East to Asia and throughout North America that have been used historically for medicine. As far as food uses go, one of the important species is what people call the Chinese artichoke, or Stachys affinis. The roots of Stachys affinis look just like our native Florida betony, and they have been sold for a very high price. So they're considered a gourmet food in some parts of the world. Florida betony has not gained popularity, but I think it's an untapped market potential for entrepreneurs who are interested in investigating and going, down that path. I would recommend presenting it to chefs as a potential gourmet food. It's really delicious. The roots are sweet and crunchy. If you've ever had jicama root, they taste just like jicama and have that same crunchy texture. So they're really, really delicious. I'm actually growing some in a flower pot, but make sure if you want to grow this plant, keep in mind it's very invasive, spreads readily, and if you plant it in a garden bed, it'll take everything else over and you probably will never be able to get rid of it. The best time to harvest the roots of Florida betony is in the springtime, around the months of April and May, when you start to see the flowers. Now, most plants, when they put out flowers, the roots, sort of all the energy goes into the top part of the plant and you don't really want to harvest the roots anymore. That's not the case with Florida betony. You can see here on the right side of the screen what the roots look like in the off season. So in the late summer and the fall, they're actually going to turn a brownish color and they'll be hollow on the inside. Whereas in the spring, they're going to be a nice white color and be completely solid all the way through with a nice crisp texture. Also, while we're here, I will mention that Florida betony roots are considered a prebiotic. They feed the healthy bacteria in your gut and overall help improve your gut biome. Now, I like to eat Florida betony roots raw, but a lot of people also pickle them, and you can do a natural fermentation through a process called lacto-fermentation, where you essentially put the clean roots in water. It can't be chlorinated tap water. And then you add a little bit of salt to it and let it sit on your counter for a few days. And it's really easy. It's called lacto-fermentation. You can make your own pickles at home. But without further ado, let's jump into some of the medicinal uses. And then I'm going to show you exactly how to prepare it into a medicine and the dosage that I would recommend. Now, although the genus Stachys is very medicinally active, with numerous species in it from around the globe being used as a medicine, there are little or no historical records of Florida betony specifically being used. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not medicinal. That just means that if Native Americans were using it, not a lot of people were writing it down. So the general consensus among herbalists in the South is that it's a weaker version of its more popular cousin, the European wood betony, or Stachys officinalis. So wood betony has been used for hundreds of years to treat a wide range of ailments. But in the modern day, it's mostly thought of as a plant that can help treat tension headaches and migraines. So I think of Florida betony as what we call a nervine. Like many plants in the mint family, nervines can help restore the central nervous system. So Florida betony in particular is what we would call a tonic or restorative nervine. It's just a generally good plant to help restore your brain after a period of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, or burnout. It's also considered an adaptogen, which is essentially the same thing in this context, a plant that can help restore the adrenals after a period of burnout. I would also try using Florida betony to help treat migraine or headache, especially tension headache. And it's also thought that it can help restore circulation to the brain, at least this particular genus, Stachys. So it's not just a nervine, but it may help restore circulation to the brain. And I would use it in cases of head trauma or head injury, including a concussion, a stroke, even like a car wreck. Those are the types of things, anytime your brain basically needs a little help healing, this would be a really good choice. Now, I'm not claiming that it's going to cure all of your ills, but I do think that in a formula with other plants that have the same sort of purpose, Florida betony would be an excellent choice for those uses listed. Now, how do you use the plant? Well, you can dry it out and use it as a tea, or you can make a tincture, which I'm going to show you next. There are little or no contraindications with this plant. It's a very safe plant. It's one of the plants that would be generally a good plant to use for health to drink every day. So next, let's look at how to make a tincture. So to make a tincture with a fresh plant, it's going to be really easy. I follow the same system for any plant. I'm going to use 95% pure grain alcohol or Everclear. This is just an off-brand Everclear what we have here. And you really don't even need to cut the plant up a whole lot. I'm going to use the flowers and the leaves, not the roots really for medicine, just the flowers and the leaves. And I'm just going to kind of crush it up. This is going to extract out, so it doesn't even have to really be blended up or anything like that. It's going to do just fine. I don't want to pack it too tightly, but I'm just going to drop it in there. Once it's loosely packed, I'm just going to fill it up with alcohol. Tincture making is one of the easiest things. I'm going to fill it all the way to the top. We call that a 1 to 2 tincture. That's just a general, I mean, we didn't weigh it. If you did it commercially, you'd want to weigh it, you'd want it, but you know, we're just doing it at home. So this is going to make a nice strong tincture, and we're going to let this sit for about 2 weeks, shaking it up every day. And then once it's done, we're simply going to strain this out. And the dosage I would personally use would be 60 drops 3 times a day. You could do 30 drops, but it's a really safe plant. So that's going to be about 2 dropperfuls would be 60 drops. 1 dropperful is about 30 drops. So 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day. The rest of this I'm going to dry, and then I'm just going to crumble it up and use it for tea. So I'll probably just use a spoonful to about a half a liter of water. It doesn't have to be a precise amount because, again, this is a really safe plant to work with. Well, guys, I hope this video helped you learn more about the Florida Betony, an edible and medicinal plant you probably have growing near you. Don't forget, if you want to learn more about medicinal plants of the Southeast, make sure to check out the description below and download my free guide to medicinal plants. Again, my name is Matthew Hunter, and I hope you all have a great day.